The guy goes out and makes the big gesture, buys $50,000 or $100,000 jewel at one of the names that you were mentioning. She'll come in and she'll tell me, she says, he gave me this thing and I'm practically in tears over it. I'm flattered, I'm delighted, you know, he stepped up to the plate, you know, he really does love me, but it's god-awful. Verdura was born in 1898 in Palermo, and his family were titled Italians. He was a duke, and like many of those families, they lived in splendor but without much money, and they were selling off the contents of their houses as they went along. Coincidental, one of those serendipitous things that happened along the way occurred in 1919 when Cole and Linda Porter were on their honeymoon in Palermo, and Fuoco was living there and met them, and they became friends, fast friends. And Porter at that time was renting a palazzo up in Venice, and they invited him to come up to Venice, and he went, and there he met Coco Chanel, and that was really the beginning of his career. Within, I think it was 6 months of the time that he went there, he ended up involved with her jewelry designs. If you look at jewelry from, say, 1905, you know, the Edwardian, on through the teens and into the 20s and Art Deco, that it was almost all in white metal. Verdura felt that women were reluctant to wear the white jewelry in the daytime, and he convinced Chanel that they should make the jewelry in yellow gold so they could actually wear it with her clothes. And he liked color, so pretty much from 1926 he worked for her for 8 years. He came to America in 1934. He and his friend de Gunsberg went to Hollywood. De Gunsberg actually ended up being editor of Town & Country, Harper's Bazaar, and Vogue. Fuoco went to work in New York for a man called Paul Flato, and Verdura had actually gone out, I think it was 37 or 38. They opened a Flato store on Sunset Boulevard, and he was posted out there, and he got to know a lot of the Hollywood crowd, and they were actually, as you probably know, making jewelry for the films. The war started, and Verdura decided to open his business literally in the same building that Flato had been in, and that was September 1st, 1939, which was the day war was declared in Europe. And he opened his business here just down the street at 712 5th, which I think is now Henry Bendel. His clients were the people who had the most money.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is that they weren't trying to impress their friends with their wealth. They'd already, that was established.
They'll past all the power,
yeah,
the power simple stuff.
I guess the moniker they'll hang on it is retro, because it was, you know, it was everything revisited in a way. It was, you know, post-art moderne, it was all those things.
Why wasn't he ever as big as some of the other well-known brands like the Cartiers and La Boursin?
He didn't care.
No, seriously?
Yeah, he didn't care.
When you first heard of this chap, what was your first reaction, honestly?
Well, I first heard about it in a sort of embarrassing way. It was 1965, and I was doing an appraisal in Dallas, Texas for Lily Pons. She was a big movie star in her day, and she was French, and she was an opera singer before she became a movie star. She had a lot of Verdura jewelry, and I had never ever seen the name before. So the jewelry was quite amazing, and it was sort of, you know, stars and comets and all, and, you know, it was really quite remarkable. And I said, you know, can you tell me more about this? And I was 24 years old. I was also head of the jewelry department at Sotheby's. Anyway, so she looked at me and she said, young man, you don't know who Fuoco Verdura is? I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't. She said, when you get back to New York, you should find out.
Why are you doing this?
I studied fine art history, and I wanted to teach, and I went to the Courtauld Institute in London for graduate studies. And while I was over there, I had gone to see Sotheby's, the auction house, and I was intrigued because in America the auction had a very negative connotation. I came back from school, and I got a job at Sotheby's, and I ended up in the jewelry department because they needed someone who understood a ruby from an emerald from a sapphire, and because I had put down on my resume that I'd worked for a jeweler for 7 years, I was the candidate.
Clear.
And that was it. But I left in 1973, and I started a company with my own name on it, but just E.J. Landrigan, and I sold, and I bought and sold estate jewelry. And I kept in touch with the people at Verdura. The man himself had retired to London, and there was a fellow at Verdura called Joseph A. Alfano, who had been with Verdura since 1935 and his days at Flato.
Oh, so he really knew.
He was part of the fabric of the place.
Yes.
And then I basically waited it out.
So when did it fall in your lap?
I started talking to Joe seriously in the early 80s, and in 84 we had a mutual friend, and a Japanese fellow called Karo Yamaoka. And one day Karo showed up in my office, which was in this building, and he said, "Ward, would you be interested in buying the company Verdura?" And I said, "Karo, I've been waiting 11 years. Am I interested?" "Yes, I'm interested." And that was it. It was that simple. When I took over the company, what I tried to do was see how others saw us, because I think if you can do that, then at least you've got a leg up, because I think it's easy to deceive yourself. But the good thing about the business is that it did have sort of not a family connotation, but it was almost like a club. So many people. When you say jewelry, the first thing that comes to mind is a big diamond, not the mounting.
Yes.
It's the idea of having something precious, and you think of how the jewelry is given. Almost always it's given either as a token of love, as a gesture of friendship, as a payoff for having done something. I mean, there's a whole current. I mean, jewelry is called the currency of love, right?
Clear. And then there's fireworks. Whereas otherwise there's the baseball bat.
Yeah.